Hi, everybody. Welcome to Afterburner. I'm Bill Whittle. Well, just before the election back in 2004, Newsweek's assistant managing editor, Evan Thomas, made an appearance on PBS's Inside Washington, where for some reason, known only to God and his bartender, apparently, he said openly what everyone in the news business knew to be true. Let's talk a little media bias here, said Thomas. The media, I think, wants Kerry to win, and I think they're going to portray Kerry and Edwards. I'm talking about the establishment media, not Fox, but they're going to portray Kerry and Edwards as being young and dynamic and optimistic and all, and there's going to be this glow about them that's going to be worth, collectively, the two of them, that's going to be worth maybe 15 points. Now, John Kerry was not exactly the kind of man who would make a thrill run up your leg. Kerry was John the Baptist to Barack Obama's entrance as the liberal Christ, but just assume for a second that the slathering that the mainstream media did over the light worker was worth the same 15 points as the far less overt swing that they gave to John Kerry. You know, I did the math several years ago, and if you swing 15 points of media bias, which, if you'll pardon the expression, is a pretty conservative view of what media insider Evan Thomas thought they'd given John Kerry, then as I recall, Barack Obama carries Delaware, the District of Columbia, and that's it. Without the 15 points of media bias given even John Kerry, it's President McCain with an electoral count of 532 to 6. You know, 15 points of bias is clearly obsolete. It's much higher than that today. And it's not just the negative coverage they give to Republicans. Negative coverage is the press's actual job. And it's not just the fawning coverage or downright cover they provide to Democrats when actual facts don't go their way, as actual facts are wont to do with Democrats. The real bias is in the silence. It's in the stories they cover inadequately, if at all. Now, that's systemic and pervasive bias, and while that'll usually do the trick, sometimes emergency measures are called for, such as that moment in the 2012 election when Candy Crowley imposed her not inconsiderable bulk between a down and out, on the ropes, confused and disoriented Barack Obama and the merciless hammering of Mitt Romney, calling the president out on his own records using his own words. Once Candy Crowley tagged Team Obama and stepped into the ring, Romney had two choices. Either say something like, "Miss Crowley, this election is between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. You're not on the ticket, so you either sit down and shut up while he's answering, or I am walking off of this stage right now." Now, he could have either done that or simply taken it and gone on to lose the election. But no. We walk into debates hosted by unbiased newsmen like ABC reporter George Stephanopoulos, who ran Bill Clinton's campaign in 1992. And we expect that by showing how swell we are, they're going to play fair in return. How's it working out so far? So, when Ted Cruz interrupted the appalling bias of the CNBC crew in the last debate and read back their questions to their faces and then compared them to the questions asked of the Democratic candidates, it wasn't just an applause moment, it was a game changer. It was, okay, it could be, a real game changer only because it shows a willingness to realize the fact that up until now, we willingly and innocently, you can substitute blindly and stupidly if you're so inclined, walk right into these media kill zones with their landmines and their machine gun nests and their zeroed-in mortars and artillery, and we advance slowly and resolutely, one by one, into oblivion. No, by calling out the media, and especially by framing it not as you versus me, but as the entire media against the Republican field, all of us, Ted Cruz has not only put a marker down, he's launched a flare up into the sky. He has, in fact, and for the first time in my memory, started to prepare the rhetorical battle space for our side. In other words, by calling out the media for their bias, he's alerted the American people to the problem using their own words as weaponry, and now one of three things will happen, and they're all good news for the good guys. One, the media bias will continue, and Ted Cruz and hopefully all the others will come to each other's defense against this common adversary. Every time we call them out, the case gets stronger, and the American people become more aware of it, and the American people are fundamentally fair. Two, even better, the media, terrified of letting the 15-point or 20-point or 30-point electoral bias cat out of the bag, will back off of the gotcha questions for Republicans and the what's your favorite color question for the Democrats, and the net effect will be the bias will be reduced. Or three, and better still, we will finally wake up to the ongoing massacres that we endure in the name of fairness and have the Republican debates hosted by conservatives. Conservatives that ask questions of substance, but in a way that tees up the ball for our team and not tee it up for theirs. What does that sound like? Well, it sounds like this. Senator Rubio, President Obama has doubled the national debt in the last 7 years. What do you plan to do to get this looming economic catastrophe under control? See how easy it is? Now look, as far as I'm concerned, the primary debates are inside baseball. They're for relatively high information voters who have a solid interest in their party's candidates and positions. But the 4 final debates, the 3 presidential and single vice presidential forums, well, they're critical because they're the only times during the entire year that the American people get to see and hear the candidates without the media telling them what they said or meant to say or didn't say or should have said. Those critical events need to have moderators selected the same way that the defense and prosecution teams select a jury panel, by being able to veto what they perceive to be a prejudicial influence before the trial starts. Or we can finally wake up to the fact that these so-called moderators from CNBC and CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, all the rest, are simply partisan hacks for the Democratic Party defending that 20-point Republican headwind. And so we can agree that people like George Stephanopoulos and Candy Crowley and Charlie Rose can host one debate, so long as Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and Mark Levin get to host the next one, and so on. What Ted Cruz did the night of the CNBC debate has changed the game, but only if he and the rest of the candidates up there taking this abuse preparatory to losing again are smart enough and united enough to simply threaten to walk off stage en masse the next time it happens. If they do that, then we may yet save this country from these elitist, fatuous, dim, narcissistic typist and teleprompter readers that formerly made up the honorable profession of news reporter.